Noosphere is the network of communication set up by technology. And so, for example, let's just take air transportation. As a result of jet planes, all centers that are in communication with each other by jet aircraft are becoming increasingly the same place. When you wake up in Tokyo, having come from Los Angeles or San Francisco, you are slightly in doubt as to where you are. Because Tokyo is an immense muddle. It's a mixture of Paris with Los Angeles, of San Francisco with Shanghai, of London vaguely thrown in, and sort of a touch of Japan. It's a phenomenal place. But if you live in San Francisco, you realize it's becoming more like Tokyo. Because we have a tremendous inrush of Japanese culture. We have superb Japanese restaurants. You can go to sushi bars, that is to say bars for rice balls and raw fish, which are beautifully served, just like in a bar in Tokyo. And increasingly, we have supermarkets which sell Oriental, African, and Japanese goods. And I call them supermarkets for the unusual. And more people are laying down tatami mats and cooking over hibachis and using chopsticks and every kind of thing like that. So the point is that how near a place is to you is simply a factor of transportation. There are places in the United States, I was just in one, far out Indian area of South Dakota. It takes longer to reach than to get to Tokyo. It's further away. It's all very good. For all practical purposes. So Fuller's idea is that by the year 1968, so soon, we have a one-town world. And it's coming fast. And as the human beings have some problem with that, because as we know, when we travel, just as when you're in an elevator, dropping the car, you will then go stuck on the 14th floor. So, jet aircraft need to go cycling. But there is difficulty even for big committees to organize this information, to integrate it in such a way that if I need to know a certain, I can very swiftly find it out. For an individual untrained in physics, it's very difficult to find out quickly about it, because this is expressed in a mathematical language. So the time lag is scanning all consciousness in a matter of scanning. It takes in the totality of the event by a sweeping, like the glance of our eyes around the room. Well, it takes time to glance of our eyes and register what's there. We want to remember it consciously. So what we're saying is that the intelligence of systems is more intelligent than any individual consciousness can be. But, of course, as a living organism, you are much more than consciousness in this scanning sense. Because you certainly don't erase it with your next We recognize these things, but we are not quite sure what we mean by them. But we recognize them at once. And for example, if we begin with the pure hypothesis that we ourselves are intelligent, and let it go at that. If we are not, then nothing is. Intelligent symptoms of an unintelligent organization. We belong in this world. We didn't arrive. words, human life goes with, as front goes with back, an extremely complex bacteriological world, which sometimes diseases us, but most of the time, by its tolerance, its size, its efforts, all these are the which, without which not, they cannot, of their being proud and very slow and and your very brain and body is utterly involved with this network of other kinds of organisms existing at a special temperature in certain gases which could only be found in certain kinds of solar systems. Now then, seeing that should give every technologist pause, because you can't go running into that situation with penicillin and DDT unless you know very well when to stop. Unless you can be very discriminating. Just one question. How do you stop having to build them up again? That's the so this is why in the Taoist Chinese view of nature and the relation of nature to human politics, they set as fundamental the principle called Wu Wei. more familiarly known by its Japanese name, Gigi Muge. Principle of the network. Between thing event and what you see in then you realize what the time is. You wouldn't like all of that. Okay, be careful of what you will get it. And then one can done, the individual. This is one of the great once you start that, all that you see is right. It's just he will make a map of the behavior of the nucleus, in which there will be various rotations. And you will see something that looks like a mathematical map. It doesn't look like a book. That's much too far away from our consciousness spectrum. And this is one of the reasons why it's difficult for us to formulate the idea that there is an intelligence on it. Because all we see is a firework display. This tremendous display of radioactive mud and gas. And one can say, well, a strictly scientific point of view, that the individual organism goes with its environment in just the same way as bees go with flowers, and flowers in their turn go with grubs, and grubs in their turn go with birds, and so on, all the way. Then, when you want to define yourself, you cannot say that I am just what is inside the skin, because what is inside the skin goes with everything outside and constitutes a single complex field of diversified behaviors, diversified processes. You look at that then from a strictly physical point of view, and there it is, this network. But then the trouble comes up is, you say when you've studied that and you've read all the books on ecology and botany, zoology, astronomy, and so on, you say, yes, I see that. That's quite true, theoretically. But I would like to be able to feel that this is so, as mystics report that they have felt it. To have that kind of experience in which the network is absolutely clear. Because you see, if we don't take it that far, if we know about it theoretically only, the theoretical knowledge is not going to have much effect on what we do. But knowledge of a more emotionally compelling nature will indeed affect the way we act with respect to our environment. And may, in fact, prevent us from destroying our environment, as we are now very busily doing. It's interesting that the Congress of the United States recently passed an act making a very serious attempt to burn the earth. They passed this act with many sociologists, not society poets. This is the most fantastic example of American dispute between symbol and reality. Because this same Congress is directly or indirectly the burning up of that namely the geographical by not really doing much about devastation of our forests, pollution of our water and atmosphere, the reckless growth of our to be beaten up. If we do that, we turn ourselves into a swarm of locusts on the planet. The price for eating beef is that you must farm. power supply, careful. Same as fiction. We have not cosmetic waves, therefore they're on their way to extinction. This is the price. You've got to cherish the animals. And then furthermore, after that, you put it out into the place. You've got to put it. You have to chew it up and have it straight in the air. That's an irreverent use of dead animals, dead plants. They give their lives to offer responsibility. Chopping board and range, which we use. And it's not a kind of a... Kitchens are not to be looked on as sort of lavatories where you throw things together and put it in the upper end. So, but this can only come about in a situation where human beings are vividly aware of external world as much themselves as their own bodies. You must allow yourself to feel that what you see is not merely something out there. It's in your head. In your head, you know. And these things mutually communicate with each other. Now it's in your head. Now you're in your head. And this rhythm sets up what we call rhythm. So if you see that the external world is as much you as anything inside your skin or anything inside your head, then you have a certain respect for it. And no longer consider matter, for example. Take a piece of wood. A piece of wood is not just a chunk of stuff. People think about it as well. You can't live without it. You think you're inert, unseen, rock, have no being, thought, mountain, they say it's called strange ways. And finally get rid of us and leave the land of the Indians who originally owned it. Let's have a brief intermission. And I said I was planning to devote this afternoon's session to that problem and some of its ramifications. This, of course, is the area of the well, he has pointed out that just as the beast is an exception to the and as the automobile naturally comes to the telephone, telegraph, radio, and television is an extension of the nervous system. And into that we must throw, as an additional extension of the nervous system, the computer. The computer into which data can be fed from the files of the insurance companies, reproduction in a new sense. We say now, one of the meanings we give to the word reproduction is sexual reproduction of the species, or the biological method. Then we have reproduction through photocopy and all that kind of thing. Let's suppose, too, that we begin increasingly to be able to manufacture the parts of the human body in very perfect kinds of plastic. So that when your heart goes wrong or your kidneys go wrong, the surgeon will simply replace them with plastic reproduction, working very well. System of some kind which will do the same job. So that then, after the years go by and your parts have been replaced, the serious question arises as to, are you the same individual? And we would say, well, no, you've been entirely replaced. Plastic lay that bugbear to rest. Although I must say, there is something about plastic in this stage of evolution that is somewhat repulsive. There is a state of consciousness which those who are psychedelically hip or hep call the plastic doll.
Now playing, title screen page.
Telephone will disappear, and every individual will carry around with him a thing about the size of the old pocket watches. One side of it will be a TV screen, the other side of it will be a set of buttons, over which you just place your finger. You will be able to dial world information. We will give you the number of any He doesn't answer. Some of its further possibilities. People like Toynbee and McLuhan have noted that as technology progresses, there enters into it a quality of what they call materialization. This is connected with Teilhard Chardin's doctrine of peduncles. the development of automotive traffic, truck traffic, the railroads become increasingly obsolete. And there are rusty old tracks lying all over the country that are not used anymore. And then with the development of aircraft, the road tends to become obsolete. With the development of radio, the wire as a connection, as a conductor, becomes obsolete. So that more and more, the connecting links that we saw in the visible world, we both have labor needs to be defined. And like that, I can recreate in front of me myself and my exact environment, everything around, just sitting this in the book. So that eventually you don't need to say. You can conceive of some science fiction writer track, or things that are on the pole. When you never need to place for your properly educated Britishers and some other peoples dread. It is said the Englishman's home is his castle. And everybody needs a castle, a place we can get away from.
Bob's Castle presents, Bob is Not Real.
Think those are your thoughts, and they're nothing of the kind. An inner pandemonium under the dome of the skull is going on all the time. Myriads of voices, myriads of influences from outside working upon you, even when you are physically quite alone. So this means that you are not nearly as much of a private individual as you think. course, exercising these influences upon other people. You're telling them who they are, what you think about them, what you think of their behavior. And even if they don't believe you, they nevertheless pay very serious attention to you. They can't help it. You could take the experiment, for example, that B.F. Skinner used to try. Very terrifying. He would send two members of the class, selected arbitrarily, outside of the room. Then he would arrange two chairs, chair A and chair B. Unless he is onto the game and he challenges the whole group, I see now what you're playing. You have made up your minds to disagree with everything I say. Therefore, of course, you don't count. I shall pay no attention. Provide you with the mirror in which you attain a realization of yourself. You know who you are in terms of your relationships with others. So then now, when we contemplate this disappearance of privacy and a completely integrated human society, we can look at this from two different points of view, pro and con. Let us first look at the pro point of view. How great to have nothing to hide. How great to give up all worries about ownership. Because you could say, if somebody says they would like something you have, and you say, please, have it. Because you know very well you can go to someone else and say, could I have that? And they'll give it to you. And so all the way around, there is no propriety, in the sense not of prudish propriety, but propriety in the sense of possession. Now also, of course, in the sense of prudish propriety. Nobody has any dirty little secrets, because if I have any dirty secrets, I know very well that you have too, and so let's drop the whole pretense and let go. So in this sense, there might be a very, very close fellowship between all people, in which there are no barriers, no defenses, and we all cooperate together beautifully and love each other. Now, let's look at the con point of view. The con point of view would say, yes, but surely, the more we communicate with each other in that way and have no property, and there are no boundaries, and there are no fences or defenses, then, just in the same way that jet aircraft make all within space, so That is the moving ideal of the sort of people who first created the great hospitals, the abolition of slavery, the abolition of death penalty, the who made that great humanitarian movement in the 19th century, especially in the 17th, where the Allies and so on, to rescue the precious individual from the ravages of persecution or Then when a kind of American capitalist liberalism achieved to some extent this sort of ideal, we look then at political forms which are socialistic or communistic and are weary of because they seem to go back. So, and when a policeman gets uppish, he has to be reminded that we pay his salary, and that his job is to serve us, and not to be a kind of admirable Crichton sort of butler who takes the upper hand. But of course, the very idea of a servant still calls it, has in it, doesn't it, something of aristocratic. Janitors call themselves maintenance services. I suppose barbers will soon call themselves tonsorial experts. All sorts of things like that are happening right now in order to give the sense of equality all around. Here it is, you know, everybody slaps everybody's back. Now, I was very puzzled by this when I first came to live in California, because here the use of first names and this kind of familiarity is extraordinarily common. And when I found myself on first name terms, The subliminal cues, which distinguish one form of first name address from another. Of course, what eventually happens is that people have two first names, the published one and the nickname, known only to an intimate circle. Used only by an intimate circle. Himself as an expert psychological guru. And when you express an opinion, or say, you walk up to such an individual and say, "Good morning. How are you feeling?" Because why do you ask? And he immediately, breaks the social rules, whereby you communicate with another person without actually saying it. Phrases testing, is that so-and-so, give a call letter, etc., and you know you're in touch. So in the same way, we, in our general daily converse, we feel each other out by saying these little social platitudes. And then we test the person as to whether they, by the sound of the voice, by the smell, suddenly someone at the table turned to him and said, "You know, I can't stand people who use silence as a weapon." And he who has nothing to lose has really no fear, either of the loss of his property, society, or his private. But there are other people who, in this situation of the loss of private, are completely depraved. Sort of herded around, and they all look the same, put the same uniform, have the same haircut, and also in the army, they say in the Marine boot camps. The first thing is to degrade the individual ritually so that he has no privacy. And see what happens. Now you may, the result of this is that you may brainwash they're not really in communication with each other at all. Except insofar they may communicate with each other, but this controls the nature of their communication. So in other words, when a politician speaks to an enormous audience, what he sets up is a crowd. Because the audience are individuals who don't know each other. They're just people, they're just heads or hands. And so, much less answer. So this is a strictly one way. I mean, let's look at contrast to the design of the proof. Now, the proof has no leader. Because it is itself an order. So we're not the representative group, representative sub 1, will elect representative sub 2 to go to a representative group of sub 2. One of these will not ever individually elect the President of the United States, but his representative at a certain level will, because his representative at a certain level knows far more about who to select than he does, because he's made it his business to do so. Every individual can't do that. And so you will find that this is the system of direct representation used by all dictators. All dictators vote themselves into office by referendum. They take it to the people. Say, you are the people, you elect me. Well, it's the easiest thing in the world to bamboozle an enormous number of people by mass persuasion to do practically anything you want. But you can't bamboozle that kind of trust. Here, with the mass communications, everybody getting the same thing. Now, they have a power. They're like Quakers. The Quakers don't vote. They get what they call a sense of the meeting. Because they all know each other, and they consider putting a thing to a vote as of stations. But as the technology becomes more perfect, you can receive an enormous number of different stations. And these stations will increasingly have machinery that makes them fairly simple to run. For example, with a videotape machine now made by Ampex costing $6,000 and a Sony television camera costing $250. You could produce a television show with only one technician. The average TV show produced in the studio requires 14 technicians. So, as this happens, you see, it means that there can be an increasing variety of the kind of material that is presented through the electronic channels. McLuhan adds to this a kind of strange point of view, which is that it really doesn't matter what kind of material is going over, because the message is not the content of the television show, but your exposure to and involvement in that kind of a medium. Well, there's something to this. That when you touch a person physically, which is a sort of a direct communication, you don't necessarily say anything. It is just the act of touching that may give the message or the massage of affection or love. And so people love to wander into the streets and mingle with a crowd of shoppers, especially a colorful crowd going back and forth, and the feeling of all the interesting people around and everything. Saying to anything to each other in words, but this exciting feeling of being involved in this colorful goings-on. And so in the same way, when we are plugged in, it's not I suppose the reason is basically that we are rather like the British. It's always said that the Frenchman needs the justice and the British needs the apologetic. And there's a certain feeling that we shouldn't think too much about what the French people love to talk about. And we think that's slightly wrong. Eating, after all, is something a little animal. And we don't want to smack our lips dry. And unlike the Chinese and the Islamic people, we don't want to say that we're perfect afterwards. Because it's a sign of appreciation of how good a dinner it was. We eat beautifully. True, we do like our steaks and our there are various complex reasons in this, but somehow our reluctance to enjoy life with gusto, because God may be watching, or the gods, or the fates itself. And there's a feeling that if you're too boisterous, if you're too thoroughly very wicked to waste any food or to waste any good materials because it deprived people. But today, we in the United States are living in an economy of waste. I remember when I was first living in this country, my mother came to visit us. Who was found in the men's toilet in a bar, and one of the fellows went in and he had a jug of beer and he was just pouring it down the toilet. He said, "What are you doing?" And the fellow replied, "I'm just tired of being a middleman." various sovereign nations of the world on waging war since 1914. That amount of effort and treasure would have supplied everybody on Earth, I think, with a decent independent income. But you see, politicians and businessmen are not practical. Decided that all the chief banks of the world would open offices on a certain island in the South Pacific, which was balmy and comfortable. And there they would store all the gold in the world. And they put it in great subterranean vaults reached by deep elevator shafts. And then all they had to do when one bank or one country owed gold to another was to trundle it across the street. And this was very efficient. It went on beautifully for 5 or 6 years. But then the presidents of the World Banks got together and said, let's have a convention now on this island, take our wives and families. So, about 7 years ago, all the circulation. But nobody will ever put down the price. There's something in our psychology whereby prices always tend to go up. But at the same time, as the amount of gold in the world, the circulation of goods all great industrial nations went elevating in debt. They created a thing called the national debt, which year by year gets bigger and bigger and And they looked at me, and someone said, oh, someone who doesn't think money is real, because everybody knows money is money. But it just isn't real at all, because it has the same relationship to real wealth and the same actual goods that words have to you. That words have to the physical world. And as words are not the physical world, money is not wealth. Say, oh, but it always creates more jobs. There will always be more jobs, yes, but they will be, lots of them will be futile jobs. They will be jobs making every kind of frippery and unnecessary contraption, and one will also at the same time have to beguile the public, giving what they need and want, completely unnecessary things that aren't useful. Therefore, enormous amount of nonsense work, busy work, bureaucratic and otherwise, has to be clear. Basic much diminished income, say some sort of dole, the manufacturer suddenly finds that the public does not have the wherewithal to buy their products. And therefore he has invested in this expensive automated machine to no purpose. And therefore, obviously, the public has to provide with means of purchasing. People have to be responsible for issuing to themselves sufficient credit to circulate the goods they are producing and have to balance the measuring standard of money with the gross national product. That means that taxation is optional, completely optional. It ought to go the other way. Theobald points out that every individual should be assured of a living. Now you see that absolutely horrifying. There we were still in a material sense, very collective, fields, farms, mines, factories, everything goes. Suddenly the public is psychologically happy because of a mysterious mumbo-jumbo about the economy, about the but to play fair with each other and keep some sort of standard correspondence between how much is produced and how much is produced. the goal, and it does when you work that way. You begin increasingly to confuse it with happiness or with pleasure. Yes, one can take a whole handful of crisp dollar bills and practically water your mouth over. But this is a kind of a person who is confused like a Pavlov dog who salivates on the wrong bill. It goes back, you see, to the ancient guilt that if you don't work, you have no right to eat. That if there are others in the world who don't have enough to eat, you shouldn't enjoy your dinner even though you have no possible means of conveying the food to them. And while it is true that we all destructive emotion. Instead, we need to have a different attitude to our mistakes and to our misdeeds. And it's irrelevant English. They learn all about Shakespeare and Dickens and Thackeray and Thomas Hardy and so on. And therefore they can't carry on an everyday conversation. It's like the way the English study French. All about pens and gardener's arms and things like that. But they are ashamed to try out their English unless drunk. So if you want to get into conversation with the Japanese in English, you have to go to bars. And then there is the university students and so on there who loosen up and talk. She hit my fingers with a pencil. relaxed. And there's some truth in that, but only some. Protestants, of course, have chronic guilt. And you can work this out by a very simple little formula, that when Protestants in England abandoned what is called auricular confession to a priest, they inserted in their prayer book a general confession in which the congregation all made its confession together. Now, what does a Catholic say when he makes his confession? The formula is, I confess to God Almighty, the Blessed Mary, ever Virgin, Blessed John the Baptist, the Holy Apostles Peter and Paul, and all the saints, that I have sinned exceedingly in thought, word, and deed, by my fault, by my own fault, by my own most grievous fault. Wherefore I beg Blessed Mary, etc., and you, Father, to pray for me to the Lord our God. And the priest says, Almighty God, have mercy upon you, forgive me your sins, and bring you to everlasting life. By the authority of our Lord Jesus Christ committed unto me, I absolve thee from all thy sins, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Now, instead of that, what they had to introduce into the Anglican formulary was, instead of this very simple confession of sins before the whole company of heaven, an absolute grovel, wherein they say that they have sinned so horribly, and that the remembrance of these sins is grievous unto us, the burden of them is intolerable, have mercy upon us, most merciful Father. And all this cringing and crying, breastfeeding, wallowing, guilt. And then the priest, instead of saying a simple formula of absolution, quotes all kinds of scriptural texts to prove from the Bible that those who do truly repent will be forgiven by God. Because they're very uncertain about it, therefore they have to quote all the authorities. And this absolutely grotty form of confession replaces the old one, because they were a little bit scared about abandoning direct confession. And now going back to Catholic practice of guilt, you say, when you have confessed, after saying this formula about all the saints, you confess the specific sin, and so on, whatever it was. And then you say at the end, these and all my sins which I cannot know. I firmly purpose to mention, under the arms of God. Now, I firmly purpose to mention, that is where indoctrination that you have made it clear. If at the same time you have a clear intention of absolution. Now, no sensitive Catholic can say that without having grave doubts as to whether actually he isn't going to do something again. So if you're a workaday Catholic, you know that the confession is the same. You're going to go on living the congregation together, but you go to church every so often and you get rid of the guilt. It's not going to the Bible. But when you get thoughtful about it, then you wonder whether you do really mean what you say, whether your motive is pure and your intention is right. You get into a battle. So you see how this idea of somehow there is a book, God's black book, in which he writes down every mistake you make. And then, at the day of judgment, there's going to be an account. See? They're going to add up on one side, and add up your good deeds on the other side. And the way that it's the Bible balance. Okay, so Bible has one hand a balance, and the other hand a sword. It's the sort of prototype of the figure of justice. And it's the good deeds against the evil deeds, as in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. You see the heart of the deceased weighed against the fetter of the king. That's a little more profound than the good deeds against the bad deeds. No, your heart has to be right. mustn't be heavy-hearted.
As a result of this, there arose in the latter part of the Middle Ages an enormously complicated system of celestial thinking.
It was argued, you see, that the saints, and especially the Blessed Virgin Mary, had lived lives of such sinless character, even though to be a good saint you have to say you're a miserable sinner. I've often wondered about that. But therefore, they have many merits, surplus merits, that they don't need in order to get into heaven. And therefore, by a very clever dispensation, the surplus merits are put at the disposal of the Holy Father. And they are available in the form of what are called indulgences. And if therefore you make certain pilgrimages, or say certain prayers, or make certain contributions above all, you may receive a plenary indulgence, which means you get off the whole of the time due to you in purgatory, or a partial indulgence, which say of 300 days, which means 300 days off your period in purgatory, whatever days in purgatory may be. And so an enormously complicated thing, whereby people can settle their by using credit, issued from the saints, who were, of course, producing surplus goods like machines. So now, this is why I made in the earlier part of this session such a big point about human behavior being able to be seen as a treated judge, as with judge, and over it is completely harmonious with the order of things. This is what one is able has to have the bad side to balance it, so that you know that it's good. In the words of the Taoist sage Chuang-Tzu, those who speak of having good government without its opposite misrule, those who speak of good behavior without the presence of its opposite bad behavior, do not understand. They believe that God implanted in the human heart at the beginning of creation, when he very first made Adam, something called the Yetzer Hara, or the wayward spirit, because he knew that if that wasn't there, human life would be insipid and without the least significance. There has to be this element. And so, you can see at one level that the evil side of things is part of the total harmony. It must be there. But that the function of its being there is to give you something to chew on, to work at. You will never get rid of it. But the joy of life is being imperfect. We have a world where people are not committed to drudgery. We shall discover social evil in some new form. It's exactly the same as when you're worried sick about money. Are you going to make a payment on the house or the car or that? You think you're going to have a lot more money. Worry quite fervently about something else. Because you see, we are always really in the same place. This is the basic understanding of relativity. It always reminds me of Sir Frederick Hartley when asked about his life. Therefore have other worries. So you see, when I would say one of the great philosophical questions is, are we going to make it? That all beings at every scale whatsoever, from the angels and gods at the very highest development of evolution, down through the most obscure little creature, all feel about life. Are we going to make it? An angel's problem is a very different kind of problem from the problem of the common world. But as Philip said, if a stone were as aware as an angel, a stone could be happy. Or perhaps a privilege. It is said that the holy text is reality that there are occasions upon which the angels you see, the problem of life, at every level of evolution, the whole thing, it's always the same. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. The more it changes, the more it's the same thing. Because everybody's really in the same situation. The great dare. Are we going to make it? Well, this is the situation. Karma, when the Hindus say, God is so nice to himself. then something, and that's the way it goes on. We are aware and create the hollow, stubborn, smoke, all of these, each one of which is another. And the answer is no. You're going to get away with it for a while. Yeah, you'll get away with it for a while, but in the end, no, you're not going to make it. Oh, why not? Well, for obvious reasons. Look at a star. A star is a great burst of fire. Well, the question is how far to go. Fire goes out and out and out and out and out. Then suddenly it begins to fade, the energy falls away and goes out. There's something that's there to reflect. The more tenuous form of the fire would be light. It is being thrown out to immense distance. But eventually light gets out. That's why some of the furthest galaxies are beginning to disappear. But it's too far. Because if there isn't a point, you see, where the light gives up, or the radiance gives up, it fills everything, and therefore has no way of realizing itself. Because you can only realize light by the contrast of darkness. And that's why, then, you, as a ray that shoots out of the darkness, will say, are we going to make it? In other words, how long a ray are you going to need? A long, long ray or a short one? And some people think, well, if I'm only a short ray, it's not really a great success. I want to be a long ray. I want to live till I'm 90. Beyond, not for long. Then you must listen to the Zen poem that says, in the scenery of spring, there is nothing secure, nothing insecure. Flowering branches, that's very interesting if its rays are about equal length. If they're all equal, it's sort of flat. By having all sorts of different lengths, as you find in some of those gorgeous radiolaria creatures, minute animalcules of the ocean. You see all these, there's a certain balance of length, there's a certain average which gives it a globular form, but many different lengths in the stems. So you see, are we going to make it? How far out can you get? This is always the question. But then you're not going to make it. So the ray finishes, and we call that death. But you are actually not the ray so much as the source of the ray. That's what you are really. And the source doesn't vanish. See, the source is there always. It's shooting out, shooting out. So then, if you remember that, so that at every stage of the universe, whether you are up there with the gods, or whether you are down there with the what we call human refuse, you are basically in the same situation. But everybody is basically in the same situation for the reason that everybody is basically the divine being, working out the panorama of its life in millions of different ways. And these differences of ways require spectra of many kinds. There's the spectrum of color, there's the spectrum of tone, but there's also the spectrum of orders of being. So Just as at one end of the spectrum you have purpose, at the other you have love. Now look, what is love? Purple is blue. Therefore, if we say that the beginning and end we want, if we say that the purple of the water are the very primitive forms of life, and the red, the most radiant. Thereafter, if you see the spectrum as a circle, so that when you get up, the only place to go down, unless somehow you can go back into the white light and see. It's neither up nor down, neither good nor bad. Which? So I think that one of the things that should be drawn is a circle of a circular spectrum instead of one that's stretched out on a table. And that would tell something to people that no amount of words can convey. It would speak to the unconscious in us, to the depths of understanding that are much more subtle than our intellectual thinking. And everybody could see this everywhere. And it would convey the message about Ring Around the Rosy. As is said in the Chinese texts of Zhuangzi, what is the center of the circle? The center of the circle, the true center, is any point on this planet. Because you can start the circle and finish it. So there's a koan there. It says, Indra built a seamless tower. You know, when a sleeve has a seam, this is as it were where the cross begins and has to take it out. So there's a seam. Now imagine there's a tower, but it has no seam. Indra built a seamless tower. Where did he begin? So in nature, one has this seamless order, where every point on it is central, and therefore feels in the same situation, envying those above and pitying those below. And there is always a below. Maybe the most primitive animality you imagine have pity on you. So in the same way, to try and force the issue wears you out. And when you force a lot, you usually bend the key. So you jiggle gently till you find the right opening. So in the same way, anybody can make complicated. Always jiggle to find the right moment to cut along. And then the day happens, this is a natural amount of the force. So therefore, the water force will give you the sense that your life is a flowing. The flowing is equally you and what is not you, or called not you. It's the process that's happening. And when you understand that, you'll stop asking questions about it. You will see that all asking of questions about it is, shall I say, tautological. You get explanations which don't explain. All explanations of what's happening call for further explanations, because big explanations have little explanations upon their backs to bite them. Little explanations have lesser explanations, and so ad infinitum. This is the analytic process that produces the atomic universe, the electronic universe, the protonic universe, and so on and so on. And if you go the other direction, you'll find the solar system in a galaxy, the galaxy in a system of galaxies, and then goodness knows what. Because obviously the universe as it seeks to know itself, must run away from itself. As your eyes revolve when you turn to look at them. You are the universe. You are apertures through which it is aware of itself. Holes in the wall, as it were. And so as you look, now you see it, now you don't. It's very simple. So you'll find, therefore, that the big quest, what is it? What am I supposed to do? What is human destiny? Why are we here? These questions will slowly disappear, and that itself will be the answer. The answer will be this is why. This is what is going on that cannot be described, the Tao. The Tao is simultaneously departing and arriving. Always. That's the meaning of the eternal now, eternal. Well then, to go with the watercourse is called by Lao Tzu Wu Wei. Wu means not, Wei has a complex of meanings, which can be action, striving, straining, doing, or best, forcing. Not forcing is Wu Wei. So he says, Tao Wu Wei, Tao does nothing, but nothing is left undone. In other words, Tao accomplishes all things without forcing them. And so therefore, when you master, that's the wrong word, because it has the idea of superiority. When you come to Wu Wei, by, as it were, coming down, you are working on the same principle as the Tao. And so this is likened poetically to the difference between a willow and a pine when it snows. The pine is a rigid tree, and the snow and ice piles up on the branches until they crack. The willow is a springy tree, and when the weight of the snow is on the branch drops, and the snow falls off and the branch comes up again. That's Wu Wei. Zhuangzi tells a lovely tale that a sage was wandering along the bank of a river near an enormous cataract. And suddenly, way up beyond the cataract, he saw an old man roll off the bank into the cataract. He thought, this is too bad. He must be old and ill and is making an end of himself. But a few minutes later, the old man jumped out of the stream way down beyond the cataract and went running along the bank. So the sage and his disciples went scooting after him. He said, this is the most amazing thing we ever saw. How did you survive? Well, he said, there's no special way. I just went in with the swirl and came out with the whirl. I made myself like the water, so there was no conflict between myself and the water. So in the same way, when a baby is in an automobile accident, you find often that the baby is uninjured, because the baby didn't go rigid in things. So likewise, when you learn to fall, when you do that, you learn to curl up limply, and yet make your arms very heavy so that they flop with an immense thud on the floor. And that making heavy is again like water. and this absorbs the shock. So it isn't, you see, you must realize that the water course is not complete limpness, because water has weight and therefore strength. And that really all energy, the secret of Wu Wei is that all energy is gravity. We, as a planet, would, if we encountered some obstacle in space, there would be an enormous release of energy. The obstacle would feel that it was being hit by some colossal force. But the planet is falling around the sun. And the sun is falling around something else. The whole universe is falling. But since there's nowhere for it to drop, it's sort of not falling at anything. It's just falling around itself. Sometimes there are collisions. But everything's got so much space that they're very rare. Maybe the ones that didn't have space have been eliminated and became all the dust that's in the sky. But all energy is gravity. That's the secret of judo. It's really the secret, ultimately, of the puzzle of the relationship of gravity to energy. It's the real secret of E equals mc squared. So now, if you want, you see, to find an intelligent solution to a problem, the work is done with your brain. You have all the necessary intelligence inside this bone. Only most people never use their brains, they use their minds instead. And think that they use their minds like they use their muscles, that you can strain your head and work very hard with it as if it were a muscle to achieve a result. But that doesn't work that way. When you want to find out the answer to something, what you do is you contemplate it. You visualize your problem, your question, as well as you can, and then simply look at it. Because you don't try to find a solution, because any solution that comes in that way is liable to be wrong. But when you've watched it for a while, the solution comes of itself. And that is the way to use your brain. It works for you in the same way as your stomach suggests your food, without your having to supervise it consciously. But all our attempts to supervise everything consciously have led to things that aren't too good for our stomachs, and so forth. You know how it goes. So, the reason for that is quite simple. That conscious attention, employing words, cannot think of very much. We ignore almost everything while we're thinking. We think along a single track. But the world isn't going on along a single track. The world is everything altogether everywhere. And you just can't take that into consideration. There isn't time, but your brain can. Because the brain is capable of handling innumerable variables at once, whereas your conscious attention is not. Or rather, more strictly speaking, verbal symbols are not capable of handling any more than a one very, very crudely simple track. That's why we have to trust our brains. Because you see, we are much more intelligent than our understanding of ourselves. When a neurologist admits that he's only begun to scratch the surface of understanding the nervous system, he is actually saying that his own nervous system is smarter than he is. It's outwitted him so far. And that's remarkable. So you see, what you are is necessarily more than anything you can understand. For the simple reason that an organism which completely understands itself would be comparable to lifting yourself up by your own bootstraps or kissing your own lips. So there's always this element of the nothing or unknown in any process of consciousness or knowledge. And if that irritates you, remember you are really addressing yourself to a stupid problem, because fire doesn't need to burn itself any more than a light needs to shine on itself. So for light to ask, what am I? Although it sounds like a sensible question, isn't it? Because how could you answer it? Let me demonstrate this to you in another and perhaps simpler way. For many, many hundreds of years, human beings have wanted to know, what is isness? What is matter? Substance? Obviously, it seems there must be a basis for all the shapes that we see. After all, clay is the basis of vessels. Iron is the basis of tools. Wood is the basis of furniture. But what is the basis of that? What is the substance common to everything? Well, we tried to find out. And that was the reason, at least in the beginning of things, why physicists tried to find out what matter energy is. Well, when you consider the problem, consider the question, ask yourself, what sort of answer are you looking for? Supposing you found out what matter is, in what sort of language would you be able to describe it? You realize that you couldn't. Because all that language can describe, whether the language be of words or of numbers, is pattern, form. We can measure form, we can outline it, we can explain it. But we couldn't possibly explain stuff, just basic oomph. There would be no way of talking about it. Therefore, we're asking a silly question. We're asking for a question to be answered in terms which couldn't answer that kind of question. So therefore, we might say, you don't need really the idea of stuff, of matter, because what you've got is form, and I could say it's the form that matters in anything. You know, you take a double take on that. When you look at the world as form, you will not ask questions about what is it made of, what are these shapes made of? They're because they're not made. It says Dao Wu Wei, and Wu Wei means also not making. Making is different from growing. When a plant grows, it is not patched or put together. All the so-called parts of the plant grow out of it. Whereas when you construct a machine, you assemble the parts and put them together. This is not the way a plant works, not the way you work. When you eat your food, it is ridiculous to suppose that this is the raw material of parts which are going to be manufactured in a factory and distributed to screw on to different parts of your body. The silly image. So, you don't ask, therefore, what are things made of? The next thing you don't ask is how do they go together? Because here becomes a very, very fascinating thing, that what we are unaware of is that so-called separate things are joined by space. We always think of space as separate, but that which separates also joins. That is why the word cleave is so important. It means to stick to and to divide. So we are cleft by space. When you look at a distant galaxy, we call it a nebula, because we are seeing it from a long way away. When, however, we get close to it, the nebula disappears, and we see individual stars. We are living in the middle of one. From a long way away, all the stars in our galaxy appear to be a thing. But right close up, we don't see that thing. What is it that keeps all these stars together? Oh, we say gravity. Gravity is a word for something. It means simply we don't know what it is. Like the ether that was once supposed to be the fluid through which light was transmitted and was discovered not to exist. That we could somehow do without it, that light went through nothing, through space. Marvelous, apparently. So, here are all sorts of things not joined to each other by strings, and yet they constitute a thing. And so when we get down to our own atomic structure, we are, if we were looked at closely enough, we would be like galaxies, with our atoms vastly distant from each other. What holds us together? Isn't that the wrong question? Because what matters is the form. It is your shape. Now, if I saw you some time ago, and I meet you again, how do I know you? If I recognize your shape. If I haven't seen you for some time, when I meet you the second time, there is nothing of you that I knew before. All your so-called substance has changed. Just as if I visit a waterfall, a few seconds later, you know, it's not the same water. It's falling the same way, the same style. And so in the same way, when I meet you today, yesterday, the day before, you're the same style, you're the same pattern, but it's all different. Huh. So that pattern
can come to an end. And then after a while, it can happen again. Just as if you take a newspaper photograph and look at it under a magnifying glass, what you saw with the naked eye as a clean line will appear to be a series of dots. And the dots are unlike one another. And there's no strings joining. Change your level of magnification and there's a line. You can magnify in time as well as in space. Only you do it a different way. To magnify anything in time, you speed up the time. So we take a fast motion picture of a being, and we put the being on Earth, and we expose one frame per day. And then when we run the movie, we suddenly see the being moving. It puts out a little feeler, and the feeler goes, and all the stalks leave with, out comes the being, and it eventually comes. Why, we saw a gesture. We saw a happening, which we would never notice with the naked eye. Too slow. Now that is, you see, magnifying time. Now, therefore, let us suppose we had human faces, thousands of faces, which suddenly began as little fetus cells, and we got some turn rapidly into baby face, into child, adolescent, adult, old person, skull and dust, going, all these faces coming and going, making their gesture of going through the whole lifespan. Well, we would watch and we begin to see patterns of continuity. Which things are moving much too slowly to see these, and things are moving too complicated to see them. But stand off at a distance, as it were, and you would see the same rhythms occurring again, 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 again. So that they would appear from that distance, or from time that speeded up, to be a simply continuity, like the continuity from here to here, which looked at closely is full of space. So you would get what we call in naive language the reincarnation of forms. You, considered as this kind of a wiggle that is recognizable, would happen again and again and again, with no spook traveling from one happening to the next. That wouldn't be necessary any more than it's necessary to have a line joining one dot in the first photograph with another dot, so that they will make continuous sense at a different level. You know, when you watch television, you're actually watching a moving dot. It moves so fast, it creates the image. Now let's supposing you had a different kind of eye altogether that had no memory in it. You would look at the television screen and you'd see this dot dancing all across and leaving no trace. You say, what kind of a funny thing is that? Oh, it doesn't make any sense. Seen in another way, see, all that picture makes sense. So you see, you don't have to, all these mysteries like our reincarnation, you don't need any spooky knowledge to understand. It's all right out in front of you, and you will discover that as I talk to you, I'm not going to tell you a thing that you didn't already know. All this was plain to you. All I will do is put it in words in such a way that you will be able to say, well, that's what I always thought, but I could never explain. I suppose you may think it rather nervy of me to devote this whole seminar to talking about nothing. But it's about space.
Humbug, said the ghost. Yes, ghost, he replied. Bob is not real. Greetings, welcome to my castle, replied Bob. The ghost just smiled.
Please welcome to speak to us the funniest man on earth, a performer of legendary comic genius, a children's book author of profound depth, an individual of enormous compassion who is doing so much to make our world a better place, the great Jim Carrey.
What are you sitting down for? I was gonna milk that for a while. You guys can stretch that out in post, right? You can make that longer in the edit. Thank you, Bevin. Thank you all. Jai Guru Dev. I brought one of my paintings to show you today. I hope you guys are going to be able to see it okay. It's not one of my bigger pieces, so you might want to move down front. Get a good look at it. Faculty, parents, friends, dignified guests, graduating class of 2014. And all the dead baseball players coming out of the corn to be with us today. After the harvest, there's no place for them to hide. Fields are empty. There's no cover there. I'm here to plant a seed today, a seed that will inspire you to move forward in life with enthusiastic hearts and a clear sense of wholeness. The question is, will that seed have a chance to take root, or will I be sued by Monsanto and forced to use their seed? Which may not be totally Ayurvedic. Excuse me if I seem a little bit low energy today, whatever this is. I slept with my head to the north last night. Oh man! Oh man! You know how that is, right, kids? Yeah. Woke up right in the middle of Pitta, couldn't get back to sleep till Vata rolled around. Crazy. Woo. But I didn't freak out, you know. I used that time to eat a large meal. Connect with someone special on Tinder. Because life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. How do I know this? I don't, but I'm making sound, and that's the important thing. That's what I'm here to do. Sometimes I think that's the only thing that's important, really, you know? It's just letting each other know we're here. Reminding each other that we're part of a larger self. I used to think Jim Carrey is all that I was. Just a flickering light, a dancing shadow. The great nothing masquerading as something you can name. Seeking shelter in caves and foxholes dug out hastily. An archer searching for his target in the mirror. Wounded only by my own arrows. Begging to be enslaved. Pleading for my chains. Blinded by longing and tripping over paradise. You didn't think I could be serious, did you? I don't think you understand who you're dealing with. I have no limits. I cannot be contained because I'm the container. You can't contain the container, man. You can't contain the container. I used to believe that who I was ended at the edge of my skin. That I had been given this little vehicle called a body from which to experience creation. And though I couldn't have asked for a sportier model. It was, after all, a loaner and would have to be returned. Then I learned that everything outside the vehicle was part of me too. And now I drive a convertible. Yeah, man. Top down, wind in my hair. Woo! I am elated and truly excited to be present and fully connected to you at this important moment in your journey. I hope you're ready to open the roof and take it all in. Okay, 4 more years then. They're obviously not ready. Just need some more cooking. Now, I want to thank the trustees the administrators, the faculty of MUM for creating an institution worthy of Maharishi's ideals of education, a place that teaches knowledge and experience, the knowledge and experience necessary to be productive in life, as well as enabling the students through transcendental meditation and ancient Vedic knowledge to slack off twice a day for an hour and a half. Don't think you're fooling me. But I guess it has some benefits. It does allow you to separate who you truly are and what's real from the stories that run through your head. You have given them the ability to walk behind the mind's elaborate set decoration and to see that there's a huge difference between a dog that is going to eat you in your mind and an actual dog that is going to eat you. That may sound like no big deal, but many never learn that distinction. And they spend a great deal of their lives living in fight or flight response. I'd like to acknowledge all of you wonderful parents. Way to go. What a fantastic job you've done. For your tireless dedication, your love, your support, most of all, for the attention that you paid to your children. I have a saying, beware the unloved, because they will eventually hurt themselves or me. But when I look at this group here, you know, I feel really safe. I do. I'm just going to say it. My room is not locked. My room is not locked. No doubt some of you will turn out to be crooks. But white-collar stuff, you know, Wall Street, that type of thing, you know, crimes committed by people with self-esteem. Stuff parents can still be proud of in a weird way. And to the graduating class of 2017, -3, you didn't let me finish. Congratulations. Yes, give yourself a round of applause, please. You are the vanguard of knowledge and consciousness, a new wave in a vast ocean of possibilities. On the other side of that door, there's a world starving for new ideas, new leadership. I've been out there for 30 years. She's a wildcat. Oh, she'll rub up against your leg and purr until you pick her up and start petting her, and then out of nowhere, she'll swat you in the face. It can be rough out there, but that's okay, because there's soft serve ice cream with sprinkles. I guess that's what I'm really trying to say here today. Sometimes it's okay to eat your feelings. Now, fear is going to be a player in your life, but you get to decide how much. You can spend your whole life imagining ghosts, worrying about the pathway to the future, but all there will ever be is what's happening here, and the decisions we make in this moment, which are based in either love or fear. So many of us choose our path out of fear disguised as practicality. What we really want seems impossibly out of reach and ridiculous to expect, so we never dare to ask the universe for it. I'm saying I'm the proof that you can ask the universe for it. Please. And if it doesn't happen for you right away, it's only because the universe is so busy fulfilling my order. Party size! My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant, And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job, and our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you love. It's not the only thing he taught me, though. You know, I watched the effect of my father's love and humor and how it altered the world around me. And I thought, that's something to do. That's something worth my time. It wasn't long before I started acting up. You know, people would come over to the house and they'd be greeted by a 7-year-old throwing himself down a large flight of stairs. They would say, "What happened?" And I would say, "I don't know. Let's check the replay." I'd go back to the top of the stairs and come back down in slow motion. It was a very strange household. My father used to brag that I wasn't a ham, I was the whole pig. And he treated my talent as if it was his second chance. When I was about 28, after a decade as a professional comedian, I realized one night in LA that the purpose of my life had always been to free people from concern, just like my dad. And when I realized this, I dubbed my new devotion the Church of Freedom from Concern. The Church of FFC. And I dedicated myself to that ministry. What's yours? How will you serve the world? What do they need that your talent can provide? That's all you have to figure out. As someone who's done what you're about to go and do, I can tell you from experience, the effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. Because everything you gain in life will rot and fall apart, and all that will be left of you is what was in your heart. My choosing to free people, from concern got me to the top of a mountain. Look where I am. Look what I get to do. Everywhere I go. I'm going to get emotional because when I tap into this, it really is extraordinary to me. I did something that made people present their best selves to me wherever I go. I am at the top of the mountain, and I was, and the only one I hadn't freed was myself, and that's when my search for identity deepened. I wondered who I'd be without my fame. Who would I be if I said things that people didn't want to hear? Or if I defied their expectations of me? What if I showed up to the party without my Mardi Gras mask and refused to flash my breasts for a handful of beads? I'll give you a moment to wipe that image out of your mind. But you guys are so ahead of the game. You already know who you are. And that peace that we're after lies somewhere beyond personality, beyond the perception of others, beyond invention and disguise, even beyond effort itself. You can join the game, fight the wars, play with form all you want, but to find real peace, you have to let the armor go. Your need for acceptance can make you invisible in this world. Don't let anything stand in the way of the light that shines through this form. Risk being seen in all of your glory. it's not big enough. This painting is big for a reason. It's called high visibility. It's about picking up the light and daring to be seen. Here's the tricky part. Everyone is attracted to the light. The party host up at the top, who thinks unconsciousness is bliss and is always offering to drink from the bottles that empty you. Misery below her. Despises the light, can't stand when you're doing well, wishes you nothing but the worst. The Queen of Diamonds, under him, needs a king to build her house of cards. And the hollow one down bottom there will cling to your leg and say, please don't leave me behind, for I have abandoned myself. Even those who are closest to you and most in love with you, the people you love most in the world, will find clarity confronting at times. This painting took me thousands of hours to complete. And when I was finished, thank you, thousands of hours, yes. I'll never get them back. I'll never get them back. I worked on this for so long. I was weeks and weeks like a madman alone on a scaffolding. And when I was finished, one of my friends said, this would be a cool blacklight painting. So I started over. Welcome to Burning Man. Some pretty crazy characters up there, but better up there than in here. You know? Painting is one of the ways, thank you. Painting is one of the ways I free myself from concern, a way to stop the world through total mental, spiritual, and physical involvement. But even with that comes a feeling of divine dissatisfaction, because ultimately, we're not the avatars we create. We're not the pictures on the film stock. We are the light that shines through. All else is just smoke and mirrors, distracting, but not truly compelling. I've often said that I wished people could realize all their dreams and wealth and fame, and so that they could see that it's not where you're going to find your sense of completion. Like many of you, I was concerned about going out into the world and doing something bigger than myself, until someone smarter than myself made me realize that there is nothing bigger than myself. My soul is not contained within the limits of my body. My body is contained within the limitlessness of my soul. One unified field. One unified field of nothing, dancing for no particular reason, except maybe to comfort and entertain itself. As that shift happens in you, you won't be feeling the world, you'll be felt by it, you'll be embraced by it. Now I'm always at the beginning. I have a reset button, and I ride that button constantly. Once that button is functioning in your life, there's no story that the mind can create that will be as compelling. The imagination is always manufacturing scenarios, both good and bad, and the ego tries to keep you trapped in the multiplex of the mind. Our eyes are not viewers, they're also projectors that are running a second story over the picture that we see in front of us all the time. Fear is writing that script, and the working title is, I'll Never Be Enough. Now you're going to look at a person like me and say, how could we ever hope to reach those kind of heights, Jim? How can we make a painting that's too big for our home? How do you fly so high without a special breathing apparatus? This is the voice
of the ego.
And if you listen to it, there will always be someone who's doing better than you. No matter what you gain, ego will not let you rest. It will tell you that you cannot stop until you've left an indelible mark on the earth, until you've achieved immortality. How tricky is this ego that it would tempt us with the promise of something we already possess? So, I just want you to relax. You know, that's my job. Relax and dream up a good life. I had a substitute teacher from Ireland in the 2nd grade that told my class during morning prayer that when she wants something, anything at all, she prays for it and promises something in return, and she always gets what she wants. Well, I'm sitting at the back of the classroom, you know, thinking, well, my family can't afford a bike, you know, so I went home and I prayed for one. And I promised I would recite the rosary every night in exchange. Broke that promise. But 2 weeks later, I got home from school to find a brand new Mustang bike with a banana seat and Easy Rider handlebars. Yeah. From fool to cool. My family informed me that I had won the bike in a raffle that a friend of mine had entered my name in without my knowledge whatsoever. So that type of thing has been happening to me ever since. As far as I can tell, it's just about letting the universe know what you want and working toward it while letting go of how it comes to pass. Your job is not to figure out how it's going to happen for you, but to open the door in your head. And when the door opens in real life, just walk through it. And don't worry if you miss your cue, because there's always doors opening. They keep opening. And when I say life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you, I really don't know if that's true. I'm just making a conscious choice to perceive challenges as something beneficial so that I can deal with them in the most productive way. You'll come up with your own style. That's part of the fun. Oh, and why not take a chance on faith as well? Take a chance on faith. Not religion, but faith. Not hope, but faith. I don't believe in hope. Hope is a beggar. Hope walks through the fire, and faith leaps over it. You are ready and able to do beautiful things in this world. And after you walk through those doors today, you will only ever have two choices: love or fear. Choose love, and don't ever let fear turn you against your playful heart. Thank you so much. Big Lou Dev. I'm so honored.